Hey guys, it's Stephanie. I'm going to talk about Hinduism and therapy and what you need to know. I'm going to follow along on the handout that I've provided on the classroom webpage, so feel free to pull that out. I do want to note that it is a rather long handout, so it's more for your resource to have in the future than for purposes right at this moment. So, I do want to start by saying that Hinduism is one of the top three largest religions worldwide. So, you are more likely to encounter someone of this religion within your counseling office. Sorry about the siren. So, the goal of life is essentially to be liberated from the cycle of life, death, and reincarnation. And this is achieved through the union of self with the ultimate impersonal spiritual being. Humans are spiritual beings and interconnected to not only the universe but to one another. And as a result, there is a high emphasis on community and family. Reincarnation is what occurs after death when your good karma and your bad karma have not been resolved. So instead of being free and going on to this union of self with the ultimate impersonal being, you are put through a process of reincarnation so that hopefully you can make amends for your karma and achieve moksha. All souls are hopefully going to attain moksha. It's not necessarily true though, because that process of reincarnation could essentially keep going because your good karma has not resolved your bad karma. There are three major pillars for practicing Hinduism. There's worship, scripture, and guru disciple. Within Hinduism, history is viewed as having no real purpose or goal in the sense that we're just learning from this cycle so that we're hoping not to make the same mistakes. The material world that we're connected to, while we are connected, it is superficial or artificial, and as such, we shouldn't be as dependent on. There's no single founder or scripture really within Hinduism that is sort of the equivalent of the Bible or like the end all be all. It's generally accepted that Mahabharata is the most revered text for teaching, but as I said, there's no single founder or accepted scripture as being the one scripture of Hinduism. The emphasis for healing within a Hindu context is through astrology, yoga, worship, and gurus. A lot of the healing comes through things that require discipline. And as you'll see, discipline is also a key tenet throughout worship and scripture as well. So some of the key concepts that I want to talk about briefly are that of Brahman, which is the ultimate transpersonal spiritual reality. It's an eternal and infinite universe. And then the next one is Atman, which is your true self, divine and immortal. So your Atman is sort of like your soul and the core person that you are. We've already talked briefly about karma and the relation to the world and reincarnation. Moksha is the liberation from the cycle of the mortal life. So moksha can be considered nirvana or even referenced as Brahman itself. Maya is what is the material world or that superficial world that we're striving to shy away from. Dharma is a universal principle of law, order, and harmony. And dharma is what is considered their duty. So it's this principle of personal duty to the universe, to each other, to self. The rest of those terms you guys can go through on your own time. One I do want to point out is this Ishta Devata, which is desired form of God. So that's sort of like a personal relational form of the gods of Hinduism. So we're going to talk about the 4 life goals within Hinduism. The first being kama, which is sensual pleasure. So this is the first goal in life. It's usually reached during childhood. It's not really about stages or reaching something. It's more when it's mostly experienced. So the major revelation is that pleasure alone does not lead to a satisfying life, and pleasure is very short term. So once the person is aware of the fact that their bodily and physical sensations, while they're enjoyable, they're not going to satisfy or liberate them from this world, the person then moves on to a focus of artha, or success. So artha is more material and artificial success. So there's three main domains within artha that are believed to be worth pursuing and working for. Those are wealth, power, and fame. These take precedence in youth and early adulthood, and I'd say are very prominent within college age demographics. The major revelation within this goal and this sort of phase is that success doesn't last, and ultimately it's not enough for a satisfying life. So having wealth, having power, having fame, while that's great, it's not going to get you any closer to achieving moksha. The next goal that takes epicenter is dharma, which is the person's duty. This duty is that the person has towards the whole community and towards self and towards the universe. So duty can be encompassing everything from serving community to bettering self, and this is where a lot of therapy is going to come in. Therapy can be viewed as contributing to someone's dharma, so that is their duty, is to go through therapy and learn from the cycle of their past in order to free them from that cycle, in order to make and gain more wealth, power, and fame and liberation. I do want to note that dharma ultimately takes precedence in old age when man starts thinking about their legacy. So when applying this in a therapeutic context, it might be beneficial to relate dharma and artha more so, depending on the age of the person that you're working with. The next goal of life is moksha, or liberation, and this is the ultimate goal. This is the epitome of what everyone is searching for. It's liberation from this world. So it's freedom from the attachment to the artificial and anything that binds us here, and gives you the ability to be one with an unchanging spiritual force, or Brahman. So gods, I went ahead and listed some of the prominent ones there. I do want to note that there's two types of gods. There are personal gods that have attributes, and then there are sage gods, who are gods without attributes. And a lot of people are going to have their own personal god that they are more devoted to and that they feel closer to. As far as sacred texts, we'll talk a little bit about this. Like I said earlier, there is really no one end-all be-all text or founder of Hinduism. So the first sacred text we're going to talk about is that of the Vedas, and this is the religious text defining Hindu truths. There are 4 parts within it, and it's considered the holiest Hindu text. There are also the Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are sacred texts binding Hinduism that are more stories and epic legends. And these can be good to bring up and to draw from for building resiliency, and essentially for giving the person that opportunity to learn from these past stories and epic legends and hopefully apply them to their own life and reach liberation sooner. Worship is considered deeply personal and intimate, and a lot of worship is done as a way to instill practice and discipline. Worship is termed puja, and it consists of offerings, chants, and holy lamps, temple worship, things like that. It's done frequently, although there's not really any directive as to how frequent or when. One interesting fact is that 85% of homes that are Hindu within the United States have a shrine. And I was talking to a friend of mine who pointed out that a lot of Hindus will also have idols in their cars. There's also worship through meditation and yoga and in temples. And I do want to note that meditation and yoga in a Hindu sense are not going to be what the Western world has created meditation and yoga to be. It's more of a spiritual journey into trying to clear your mind of all distractions so that you can experience oneness with this eternal being. Temples are important and a good way of worship. And what's interesting about them is that anyone from anywhere is welcome, and they're welcome to pray without pressure. So that's very familiar to that of a Christian perspective and wanting to just sort of invite people in and allow them to experience that without the weight of whatever pressure could bring. Traditional methods of healing were worship and prayer, astrology, yoga, meditation, gurus. So now I want to go ahead and move into a therapy context and what Hinduism is going to look like and what strengths it brings into the therapy room. So Hindus are more likely to explain their problems in a spiritual context, especially in terms of karma, so what good and bad acts and what's done essentially to them, and dharma, so their duty. So therapy can be positioned as being part of that dharma. So it's their duty to self to try to improve and to understand their own cycles and their own karma and all of that. Narrative therapy is especially well suited for Hindu women, given the enculturation issues and pressures that arise. So a main problem among Hindu women is that of the pressure of the traditional Hindu role of a woman and a wife, and the pressure of taking on a more Americanized role of being the woman and wife within a family. Narrative therapy is going to be efficacious for Hindus a large part because it gives them that opportunity to tell their story, including that spiritual realm and including the karma and all of the elements of that. It's imperative to bring in and discuss spirituality, I'd say with all clients, but especially with Hindus, because they believe in a religious interpretation of all life. So it's not so much a relationship with God, religious interpretation, more of just that religious entity flowing in existence throughout. There's also this ability to connect Atman, which is their true self, and this idea of Brahman and being able to achieve sort of oneness with the universe and with that spiritual supreme being. So clients are living and embracing their Atman or true self will be more able to experience that spiritual connection to the cosmic divine. And there's a paradox within that because achieving true self is usually shedding our old self and really examining and getting rid of old parts of ourselves in order to have just that true part of us remaining. The 4 goals of life can be thought of sort of as spiritual development within Hinduism and how they progress throughout that. And this can then bring into your therapeutic interventions, given your ability to know what goal they're really at right now and being able to tie in dharma and their duty to self and others and artha and the material world and things like that. The client is essentially searching to create a fulfilling and satisfying life free from constraints of the material world. So within therapy, the Dharma can be used to enhance the treatment process. It can focus on a client's duty to community and contributing to the greater good. It can also be viewed as their way of continuing on a path of oneness with the Supreme God. So it's pure and correct. Dharma is considered pure and correct, and the emphasis is on morality, virtue, and community. And a lot of this can be tied in with positive psychology and with a lot of different therapeutic treatment interventions as well. There's also an ability to tap into spirituality through yogas and meditation. And I would say that a couple ideas for building resiliency within a Hindu client would be to encourage individual and communal worship through prayer, meditation, pilgrimage, chants, things like that, and to encourage them to do selfless acts. That's a big way for them to not only enhance and build their karma and fulfill their duty to the universe and community, but it's a good way for them to sort of experience that psychological benefit as well. There's also journaling. narrative is a very key theme throughout Hinduism, and storytelling is a very effective form of relating and a form of healing for Hindu clients. So encourage exploring ancient healing techniques as well. So maybe astrology or seeing a priest or something like that could be beneficial to a client. And hopefully you're able to have those resources now to know when to suggest or to help them tune into what spiritual things they have in their toolbox to help build that life free from confines of this world. So there are references at the bottom for you guys. I do want to note that the software for Logos has a Theology 191 sort of course that's super helpful, and it has a lot on Hinduism. And I just hope that you guys are able to glean from this what you need, and when that opportunity arises, that you feel comfortable working with a Hindu client.